Hello, people. Welcome to Talking with Tracey, the ride to self-love. I'm Tracey. So, today's topic is exes and the gifts they gave us. This can be a difficult topic for some people because we don't often like to look back on our exes and think about the wonderful things that they did. That might not be the first thing that enters into our head, but I want to help with that with this episode. It's not necessarily really about the wonderful things they did as much as being able to find the silver lining in the clouds, being able to find the hidden blessings in things. Why would we want to do this? Because it brings me more peace. It brings me more peace to come to peace with past relationships. It brings me more peace and it brings me more happiness to be able to look forward and move forward instead of looking back with resentment and anger and bitterness. So we're going to talk about exes today. And I'll talk about it in regards to my own story, and then we'll talk about some tools that we can use together as a group to help us move forward in this way. It's a decision that says, I love me. When I can look at past relationships through a different lens, it really is a decision that says, I love me, because it helps me to grow. And it also helps me to find that peace that I'm looking for. And ultimately, that's part of my self-love journey, is feeling at peace, feeling good inside. So, all right. So exes and the gifts they gave us. I will talk about my first marriage in this particular episode. In my book, Motorcycles, Moose, and Magic, I don't talk about my ex until like page 124. You would never have known that I was with someone for 15 years when I wrote the book. When you get through it, like you're, almost halfway through the book, or about halfway through the book when there's even a mention that there was someone else in my life. I don't even mention it before that. Why did I do that? I did that because I didn't want a book about us. I wanted a book about me and my journey, my self-love journey. I didn't want it to be a story about what had gone wrong there. I wanted it all really to be about me. And even when I get to that chapter, somebody that I used to know on page 124 about my ex, I still never mention his name. I don't talk about the things he did. I don't go on about the incorrect things he did, the bad behavior, anything like that. What I talk about is my own involvement in the relationship. I don't talk about him and his behavior. I talk about me and mine. And why would I do that? Because here's one of the gifts that comes out of relationships with exes. The reality is we cannot change their bad behavior. I can go on and on for hours about things that were unhealthy, things that shouldn't have been done, things that shouldn't have been said, but it's not going to get me anywhere on my journey forward. What will get me somewhere is taking a look at, if it was so unhealthy and all these bad things happened, why did I tolerate it? Why was I there for 15 years? I can answer that question really easily now. It took me a while to figure it out because I was busy in the blame game at first when the relationship ended. And in fact, for a number of years, I was busy in the blame game. I blamed him, and then I blamed myself, and then I recognized that neither one of us knew what a healthy relationship looked like. So of course, we couldn't have a healthy relationship together. Neither of us were healthy. When I look back on it, and I am looking for the gifts that came out of that, why I tolerated it is the biggest gift, because that is the place that I can heal. There's a quote in my book, actually, where I talk about that on page 126. I'm going to read it to you here. Give me just a second to pull it up. All right. Once you're out, what your ex did or didn't do doesn't really matter as much as answering the question, why did you tolerate it? Whatever the answer is, have compassion for that place. Heal that place. Make healing that place your number one priority. Send that place within yourself all your love and compassion. That's what matters. And that's what I did. I finally took a look at, why did I tolerate it? Like, why, if it was so bad, why did I stay there for 15 years? And the answer was really quite obvious to me. I needed to hear that I love you from someone else. I did not love myself. I was busy in self-hatred without even realizing how much I hated myself. I was busy and really involved in self-hatred. There was deep down in my belly, I believed that I deserved bad things. And so to have someone outside of myself saying, I love you to me on a continual basis, I fed off that, and I needed that. I needed it more than anything. The reality of that relationship is it tore down. So in that same relationship where I'm hearing I love you every day, it tore down any sense of self-esteem, self-value, self-worth that I had before I walked into the relationship was gone by the time I left 15 years later. All 100% gone. But that's why I tolerated it, because I needed to hear I love you from someone else. And so that's the place I made healing my number one priority. That part of me that needed to hear I love you from someone else, not even just an ex, but whether you need to hear it from your parents, whether you need to hear it from your siblings, whether you need to hear it from your friends. I wanted to never have to need that so desperately that I would put up with other people's bad behavior just to hear I love you. So I started to look myself in the mirror and look myself in the eyes and say, I love you, Tracey. And at first I didn't mean it and I didn't feel it. It would make me bawl my eyes out to say that. But I kept working on it, and I kept working on my affirmations, and I kept working on my self-esteem, and I kept finding the good. I tried to look at myself through God's eyes, because I felt like God loved me, like the universe loved me. I felt like I was loved by the universe and by God. So I wanted to look through those eyes and see, and I just continued to work on that. And it took me years and years of work, but I did the work. I did all the things that a person should do, paying attention to how I think in my head about myself, how I speak about myself, how I speak to myself, how I treat myself, how I allow others to treat me. And my perception and my understanding of myself began to shift. And I finally began to be able to see me as worthy and lovable. And I realized that God loved me and that I could love me too. And so I just kept working on that. And I said, I love you enough to me that I didn't need to hear it anymore from somebody else. I wasn't desperate for someone else's love, because I gave myself all the love that I needed. I made sure that I was looked after. I made sure I was clothed. I made sure I had a job. I depended on myself for my job, for my income. I looked after me. And that was the greatest gift that came out of that previous relationship, was that it made me realize that I needed to be independent, and I needed to learn to love me, and I needed to not depend on someone else's I love you, because I never wanted to be in that spot again. You know, when I left that marriage, I left with nothing but the shirt on my back. I ended up homeless. I was out of my mind. I had lost my mind. I lost my home. I lost my marriage. I lost my job. I lost everything. And I can't blame that on anyone except myself. You know, me and my choices are what led to that. And I love the woman who had to hit that kind of a rock bottom before she finally started to shoot back up and recognize who she was. My worth didn't change when I got clean and sober. The only thing that changed was my understanding of my worth. My worth had always remained the same. It's unconditional, my worth, and your worth is unconditional too. And I started to finally see it differently. I started to recognize that I was worthy, and that I had always been worthy. Even in my worst moment down in the gutter, I was worthy. I just didn't recognize it. That's the only thing that ever changed about my worth, was whether or not I recognized it or not. My understanding of my worth. My understanding of my worth, just like me, is eternal. My worth is eternal. Your worth is eternal. And those are some of the valuable lessons that came out of that relationship. I'm not sure if I ever would have realized all of these things if it hadn't have gotten that bad. But it got so bad that I realized I had to make different choices, you know? And so I asked myself that question: why did I tolerate this for 15 years? Why did I allow myself to be treated the way that I was? If I didn't feel it was healthy, if it wasn't a healthy relationship, which I can look back and I can honestly say, it was never a healthy relationship. It wasn't always as bad as it was at the end, but it was never a healthy relationship. It was codependent. It was addiction filled. It was all sorts of yuck. And, I always deserved better than that. So why did I tolerate it? Well, it's because of my codependency issues, my people pleasing issues, my inability to say no when I meant no, and, or to say yes, to say what I really felt, to speak up for myself, to self-validate my own beliefs and to validate my own truth. All of those things are things that came out of me realizing, like, why did I tolerate this? Yeah, so I started to take a look at all the things that I could fix that were unhealthy in that relationship. I looked at my own self-esteem and I started to work on that. I looked at my own codependency and I started to work on that. I looked at my own sexual intimacy issues and I started to work on that. I looked at my own manipulation issues and I started to work on that. I looked at my people pleasing and I started to work on that. I looked at my addiction. I looked at all sorts of things and I worked on it, and I looked at me, and that's when things started to shift. So as long as I stayed in the energy of he's a jerk and he did this and he did that and da-da-da, that wasn't going to change anything, and that wasn't going to make my next relationship better. Me looking at me was what was going to make my life better. That's the stuff I could fix, but I had to come at it from a place of compassion. The place of compassion is this. I'm not a bad person for having been in an unhealthy relationship. You know why I didn't know how to have an unhealthy relationship? Because I'd never witnessed one in my life. My parents didn't have what I considered to be a healthy relationship at all. I'd been abused as a child. I was in unhealthy relationships as a teenager. I was abused as a teenager, again, by the teacher. So I had this pattern of unhealthy relationships. Of course, when I hit marrying age, I had no idea what a healthy relationship looked like. And so I have compassion for the me who didn't have a good starting spot and had no idea what a healthy relationship looked like. The reality is, my ex didn't know what a healthy relationship looked like either. I hope he's managed to find one. I really do. I have managed to find one. It took me a good 10 years of working on me, working through my stuff, working through recovery, building up my self-esteem, building up my voice for me to be in healthy relationship, because I never wanted those old patterns to resurface. I had some relationships in between them there, and there were mistakes in it, and some of the old patterns resurfaced a little bit, but they never resurfaced the same. I always kept working on it. I became aware of those issues, and I worked on them, and I worked on them, and I worked on them, and I continue to this day to work on them. I continue to work on relationship, you know. I think I mentioned in one of my previous videos that my psychologist had asked me when I went through the counseling for the teacher, you know, what were the things that I wanted at the end of it all? Like, what was I hoping to gain? And one of the things I was hoping to gain was to just be in a healthy relationship once, just one healthy relationship in my life, because I wanted to know what that looked like. The reality is I've got 2 healthy relationships, really healthy, close relationships. One is with myself, and that's the most important one. And the second one is with my spouse, and it's a healthy relationship. Why do I consider it healthy? Because we're both very independent. We are both able to be honest. We have different truths about certain things, and we're both able to validate our own truth and to recognize that it's okay for us not to agree on everything. I say yes when I mean yes. I say no when I mean no. I'm not in a pattern of people pleasing anymore. I'm not in codependent patterns anymore at all. You know, and the codependency and stuff and people pleasing, even those are things that will try and creep up in my life, but I have an awareness of them now, so I pay attention. I don't just bury it like I used to. So when I'm looking for the gifts that my ex gave me, ultimately that relationship led me to the spot where I said, I cannot do this anymore. And I came to a spot where I was going to heal all of the stuff. I was going to heal the me that didn't know what a healthy relationship looked like. And I did that. And I spent years doing it. And you know why I spent years doing it? Because I'm worth it. I'm worth the work. I'm worth the time. I'm worth the effort. You know, I never want to be in a relationship again where I'm afraid to leave. I never want to be in a relationship where I feel dependent upon somebody else. You know, I love the idea of interdependency. But I also love the idea of knowing that if I needed to walk away, I could walk away tomorrow if that's what my heart decided I needed to do. I need to feel safe to do that. I need to feel secure to do that. And I need to know that I'm looking after myself, not asking someone else to look after me. All of those things came out of the gifts from my ex, the gifts from that relationship. That 15-year relationship was the most difficult relationship of my entire life. And it took me years to work through the mess that it was. But I've come to a place where I'm solid with I'm solid with what happened with it. I'm okay with it. I recognize that I was responsible for being in that relationship. The reality is, for 15 years, every day I had a choice to stay or leave. Yep, that decision to leave sometimes can be terrifying for numerous reasons. It can feel unsafe. But for 15 years, I had a choice every day to leave or to stay. And for 15 years, every day I made the decision to stay. It's on me. And it's not about blaming myself. I love the me who chose to stay in that relationship for 15 years. I love the me who took that long to figure the lesson out. And I send myself love and compassion for that. And that's what I want you to do for those relationships that were difficult. love the you who stayed in that relationship. Love the you who people pleased, or the you who tolerated bad behavior, or who heard someone say bad things about you, or made you feel bad about yourself, lowered your self-esteem, whatever happened in it. Love the you who stayed for that, and love the you who left. Love the you who's willing to leave. It's not about blaming ourselves. It's about having compassion for that broken spot of ourselves. It was a very broken me that stayed in that relationship for 15 years, because I was a really broken person by the time I hit my adult life. By the time I hit 18, I was completely broken. I had no idea what healthy looked like, because my life had not been healthy. And so I have compassion for the woman who did not know how to make good choices then. I have a lot of compassion for her. And she makes pretty good choices now, but even when she makes bad choices now, I put my hands over my heart and I love the me who just made a mistake. I love the me who did that again. And it's okay, because I'm learning and I'm growing. And those are the gifts, finding these gifts from past relationships will much more help you to finding peace than being angry, resentful, bitter, all of that stuff. Instead of that's energy that once it's spent, find a way to look for the silver linings that came out of your past relationships. Find the silver lining. What did you learn? Did you learn to pay attention to red flags? Did you learn to stop people pleasing? Did you learn how to speak up for yourself? Did you find your voice finally? Yeah, look for those blessings, because those are the things that say, I love me. Finding those blessings helps us to find peace, and it says, I love me. And that's ultimately what we're all after. I'm sure I've got a lot more to say on this topic. However, that's the general gist of what I wanted to say to you today to open up this topic anyways, on our exes and the gifts that they gave us. So before we go, I want you to put your hands over your heart. If you have some difficult relationships that you've been through, I want you to send love to the you who was in those difficult relationships. I love the me who stayed even when I saw red flags. I love the me who needed to hear I love you. And I really love the me who has learned how to say I love you to me. I love you, Tracey. And I want you to say that to yourself. Look yourself in the mirror, look yourself right in the eyes and say, I love you. It might make you cry to do it. It might make you cry for the first year that you do that, but it's worth it, and you're worth it. You always were worth it. All right. Give yourself a great big hug. Feel the love that I'm sending to you right now with this hug. All right. Keep being good to you. You're worth it. Thanks for listening.